Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy. I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're continuing our episode, or I guess starting a new episode on the continuation of the chapter. This is part 2 of chapter 19, Aftermath. And we left off in the previous chapter with Althea and Clef arriving to the Vestred household, Brashen kind of confronting her a bit, and then deciding that she smells very badly and she's very angry, and she storms into the house, Clef at her heels, and briefly goes to the sitting room, the study, where Ronica and Keffria are, just to announce that she's back. So the slave boy is kind of standing in the doorway, and Althea is going in just to say that she's back and warning them, and like, hey, I'm home, I'm safe, brought a little boy with me, he was a stable boy that I freed from Devads, I'm gonna shower.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a bath. Says, Mother, I know we cannot take on any more burdens just now, but he was tattooed as a slave, and I simply couldn't leave him there. The look on Keffria's face was one of social horror. Althea's explanation halted as she met Amber's eyes. She was here too? So Clef is standing in the doorway. His gaze is darting around. He's not speaking. Althea attempts to take his arm and pull him into the room. He snatches his hand away from her. She gave a false laugh. I think it's the blood and dung. He didn't want to ride with me on a horse. That's what kept me so long. When I couldn't get him to mount with me, we left the horse and came home on foot. Keffria was staring past her, so she turns around and sees Brashen there, arms crossed, looking very stubborn. He met her gaze steadily. His expression didn't change. But Ronica, is weary, but accepts, like, come in, boy.
Yeah, she's like, all right,
What's
whatever.
your name?
You know what? I love this slow change from Ronica being this like really severe by the book woman to just like, whatever, who cares? Let's have a meeting in the middle of the night while I'm in my bathrobe. Let's go.
Fine. Gotta get it done.
Yeah. What's one more person? Let's get some cakes out.
So Althea abruptly decides to escape, at least for now, and says, I'm going to bathe and change. I won't be long.
And now Brashen is saying, well, it won't take that long for me to say my idea. You can wait.
Their gaze is locked. She refused to look aside from him. He smelled of smoke and Sinden. Who did he think he was? She wasn't going to let him bully her here in her father's house. I'm afraid I'm much too tired to listen to any more from you, Brashen Trell. Her voice walked a thin line between correct and cold as she added, I believe it's far too late for conversation. The line of his mouth flattened. For a moment, he almost looked hurt at her rebuff. Rach came in and was carrying some stuff, and the boy didn't move from where he stood, but he flared his nose and snuffed after them like a dog. She brought in spice cakes.
Yeah.
Althea, her mother's tone more reminded than rebuked. I, at least, am interested in what Brashen has to propose. I think we need to consider every possible solution to our situation. But if you are that tired, we will, of course, excuse you. But I'd rather that you returned. Says, Rach, I'm sorry, but can you bring something more substantial for the boy?
And also some more cups.
Yes. Her mother's courtesy jabbed at Althea's conscience. This was still her father's house. She softened her tone. If you wish, Mother, if you'll excuse me, I'll only be a few moments.
I find it really interesting that Althea continuously assumes that she has the final say in anything that goes down at any moment.
Literally all the time. So you had what annoyed you about Althea earlier on in this chapter? That part is what annoys me in this second half of the chapter.
Yeah, it's very obvious this chapter, but I think something that happens all along, and maybe it's just like never so much in your face where she's like really that in opposition of anybody else. So
right. But
nobody's
she's also
disagreeing.
She did gain a lot of confidence in her own abilities on her own trip, right?
Definitely.
But that's like playing into overconfidence.
Yeah.
She doesn't know. She's way too full of herself to what her abilities actually are. She's very competent. She's very good sailor. She's not a good leader.
No. Yeah, I think, well, it's hard too, because clearly in this instance, it's not even about what's a good decision. It's just her feelings are hurt and she doesn't want to see Brashen right now.
Right.
So it doesn't even have anything to do with good decision making. It's just because she's embarrassed. And that's not a good reason. to make, I don't know, and she's so childish about it.
The decision was already made that he could come in. They were all invited to the sitting room. Obviously, if she thought, her mother and her sister said, yeah, we'll hear you out.
Yeah.
And now Althea comes in like, no, it's far too late. You have to go.
Yeah. You could cut this out if you want to, but this makes me think of Jane in The Mentalist. Very like...
We're watching a 2007 or 8 TV show, crime TV show.
It's called The Mentalist, and there's this one, what's he called? Psychic named Jane. He's not a real psychic, but
he's a mentalist.
Yeah, he's the mentalist. So he's hired by a police force or whatever, the CBI, California Bureau of Investigation. And he is not a police officer, but he's always calling all the shots, even though he's not in charge or a police officer. And he's always like, oh yeah, let this suspect go in the middle of an interrogation. And that's very Althea right now.
That's true. That's true.
Ugh.
So we switch back over to Keffria as Althea goes off to bathe and clean up and get rid of the stink.
The stink of big shit.
Keffria is pouring for all of their odd guests, and she's trying to make polite conversation, but her mother stared at the cold grate while Brashen paced the room, and Amber is basically ignoring her and just trying to entice Clef to get over near her and eat something. Instead, she lured the slave boy with bits of cake as if he were a shy puppy, until he finally snatched a whole cake from her hand. Amber did not seem to think her own behavior odd or outrageous at all. She smiled proudly when the boy stuffed the whole cake into his mouth. You see, she said to him quietly, folk are kind here. You're safe now.
Keffria is so interesting because she really doesn't like anything that's different.
Right. But also, people are straight up ignoring her in the room right now.
Yeah, this is very like back to square one for Keffria, and she's already feeling pretty down because her mom steamrolled her when she told Brashen, no, it's too late.
Yeah.
And then here she's trying to be polite and her mom's not engaging, and
Brashen is in his own head about Sindon and Althea, I'm sure.
And then Amber is just like
straight up ignoring him for the slave boy.
Yeah, nah, I'm good. Which, to be fair, I can see why Beloved does not like Keffria. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't think that Amber doesn't like Keffria. I just think it's clear that Keffria doesn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in making her more uncomfortable.
So Keffria is thinking that Althea was true to her word. She was pretty quick, so she must have washed with cold water. She came down looking refreshed and tired. And without any apologies, she helps herself to tea and cakes. Althea glances at Amber, then goes to join her on the floor. The boy sat on the other side of her, completely engrossed in his food. She addressed her first words to Amber. Brashen says you have a plan to save the Vivacia. He also told me I wouldn't like it, but that I'd come to see it was the only way. What is it? Amber gave Brashen a sidelong glance. Thank you for preparing her so well, she said with dry sarcasm. She lifted her shoulders in a shrug, followed by a sigh. It is late. I think I should state it briefly and then leave you all to think about it. The woman flowed smoothly to her feet, as if a string attached to her head had lifted her from the floor. She advanced to the center of the room and looked around at all of them to be sure of their attention. She smiled at the boy who was wolfing down the food on the platter. He was aware of nothing save the next bite. Amber sketched a small bow and began. She put Keffria in mind of an actor on stage. This
paragraph specifically feels like The Fool to me, especially the standing with a string pulled from the head. I think that's specifically used to describe The Fool.
I think so too.
And I feel like this might be where I knew it was The Fool for sure.
Okay.
I can't remember fully. It was a long time ago when I read this, but I really feel like this, because once again, it stuck out so vibrantly to me. I feel like this was what I need. I was like, it's The Fool. It's for sure The Fool. I don't know.
So Amber kind of lays out their plan. I propose this. To recapture a live ship, let us use a live ship. The Paragon, to be precise. We buy, lease, or steal him, put a crew aboard with Brashen in command, and go after the Vivacia." In the shocked silence that followed, she added, "If you suspect my motive in this, be assured that at least half of it is to save the Paragon from being turned into lumber. I think your good friend Devad Restart could be instrumental in getting the Ludlucks to part with the ship for a reasonable price. He has seemed to have their ear for the outrageous offers the new traders have been making. Perhaps he might be willing to seize this opportunity to save face with the old traders. Perhaps that is even truer after tonight's events. I'm willing to put up everything I own as part payment for the ship. So, what say you?" "No," Althea spoke flatly. "Why not?" Malta demanded. And Malta comes in. This is why, to people who did not remember the chapter, this is why I asked if Malta was actually sleeping or not. She comes in now, and Keffria describes her as her cheeks were pink from sleep yet. She glanced about the room and says, "I had a nightmare. When I woke up, I heard your voices. I came down to see what was going on." I think she was sleeping, and I think she had a dragon nightmare.
Oh.
With Centaglia.
Ooh, I like that theory. That's fair. I guess it's hard because we know that she is an eavesdropper and she has no qualms eavesdropping and will just make stuff up about why she was in the hallway. So,
Yeah.
But I do like the idea that she was actually sleeping and Tintaglia got to her.
But now she is asking astute questions. Why should we refuse any help? If there's an offer of a ship to go after Papa, why is Althea saying no? It seems a sensible plan to me. Why not go rescue Papa ourselves? And Althea begins to tick off the reasons on her fingers. 1, Paragon is mad and he's killed whole crews before. He might again. 2, Paragon is a live ship who should not be sailed by anyone except his family. He hasn't been sailed in years, is 3, and he hasn't even been floated. I don't think we have the coin to both buy the Paragon and refit him as he would need. Moreover, if we do this, why should Brashen be captain? Why not me? And I highlighted 2 of those things separately because, again, this last sentence is her just shooting herself in the foot, going over.
Brashen gave a snort of laughter. His voice broke strangely. "And there you have her real objection," he observed.
No one else laughed because he's pulling out a kerchief and wiping sweat from his face, and he's just acting a little weird. But yeah,
I would have laughed, Brashen. It's okay.
Because, Althea, you have great points. Just end it there.
You don't have to add the stuff that's about you, even if you think that way. It's okay. That can be an inside thought.
Inside thoughts are fine.
Encouraged most of the time.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think, to be fair to Althea, that is a good point. Like, Amber knows that Althea can sail a ship, or sail on a ship, I guess. So why not let her be the captain? Why wouldn't Amber have come to her? She and Amber were friends first. I see her point of view and why that would feel hurt, especially after the day she's had. And I feel like this is the start of the compounding of all the stuff we learn later. And when she finally explodes and is really upset about the Greg situation, this is the start of like, even my friends don't trust me or don't believe in me. She knows her family doesn't, but even her friends, that's harsh. And I do feel bad for her in that.
Like, I get Brashen's reasons later on in the chapter as well. But I feel like there's a really big one that she's just not thinking of. And that's if she was captain of the Paragon and they sailed and it was wonderful, they save Vivacia, woohoo, Althea's going to abandon Paragon then? What does that do to Paragon?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's fair. But I don't think, but I think because of who Althea is, she's not thinking about that. Yeah. She's just upset that
why can't I be the captain?
Yeah, it's very childish. She is so childish. This whole the rest of the chapter, I feel.
Yeah, she, like you said though, she has been pushed to well beyond her limits.
Yes, and I think, to be fair to her, again, obviously, whenever you're at your breaking point and things are all going wrong and you just feel attacked from every angle, of course, you're not going to be super eloquent or mature or your best version of yourself. So obviously she's having some trouble. It just, it is a little humorous how immature she is, though.
All right, so everyone's kind of concerned about Brashen. They're kind of exchanging looks, and even Keffria notes, even Althea seems to notice his weird tone and behavior. Althea frowns at Amber, but the woman did not deign to notice that. Keffria decided that perhaps it was her turn to be blunt. Forgive me if I sound skeptical. I do not see why either of you should wish to become involved in this. Why should a foreigner wish to risk her whole fortune on a mad live ship? What does it profit Brashen Trell to risk his life for a man who found his seamanship unsatisfactory? We could gamble what is left of the Vestrid finances only to lose it all if you never returned. Brashen's eyes flashed. I may be disinherited, but that does not mean I am totally without honor. He paused and shook his head. Plain words tonight will serve us all best. Keffria Vestrid, you fear I'd take the Paragon and turn pirate. I could, I don't deny that, but I wouldn't. Whatever differences Althea and I may have, I think she will still vouch for my integrity. I know your father would have. Speaking for myself, Amber added smoothly, I've already told you that I wish to prevent the Paragon from being dismantled. We are friends. I am also a friend of your sister Althea. In addition, this is something that I feel I am called to do. I can explain it no better than that. I'm afraid you'll have to take my offer at face value. I can offer you no other assurances. And there's another little hint that it's the fool.
Yeah.
Just called to do it.
Mm-hmm. Amber is so funny, though. Just imagine being like, hey, I have this really crazy idea and it's a big risk for you to do it. And they're like, oh, why should I trust you? You just should. Take my word for it. I'll let you think about it. Like,
also, I'm putting up all my money, but I just want to save him.
Yeah. Don't worry about
it. Just do it. Wink.
Like, we know that Amber is definitely trustworthy and is fine and it makes sense. But
like to Keffria, like who's heard like awful rumors about this person and then also doesn't really like foreigners to begin with, and then this person kind of walks in and assuming equality and giving her sympathetic glances like, oh, Keffria, you poor thing. Like, who are you?
Yeah, like, I just love, and it's like so funny because the audacity is Beloved through and through. Like, Beloved really doesn't care. Beloved's gonna shoot the shot, you know? And I love that about them. It's so funny. I don't know. I love it. I love everything about this chapter.
So silence falls around the room, and everyone is kind of looking around. Brashen folds his arm on his chest and is looking at Althea, but Althea refuses to meet his gaze. Malta's fidgeting, looking from one adult to the other. And again, not again. I want to point out that every time that Keffria thinks of Malta in this chapter, it's always with child. Mm-hmm. Some sort of child or comparing her to adults. Mm-hmm. There's some, mental distance between Malta growing up in Keffria's mind, which is fair. She's like 14.
Yeah, no, definitely. It makes sense, but it is interesting.
Yes.
That, it's a good thing to point out, like you said, that it is always in the context of, from Keffria's point of view, Malta is just a child.
Yes.
Which she is to us too. But whatever. What do we know?
Into the silence, Brashen eventually says, okay, well, I'll leave you to think on it then. Obviously, that's a lot of news. I'll come back tomorrow evening. He waited until Althea glanced at him. Think it over, Althea. I saw the mood of the traders as they left tonight. I doubt that you'll get any other offers of aid, let alone a better one. He paused. In a softer voice, he spoke only to her. If you want to speak to me before then, leave a message at Amber's shop. She knows where to find me. Are you living aboard Paragon? Althea's voice sounded hoarse. At nights. Sometimes. Brashen's voice was non-committal. And how much Sindin have you used today? She suddenly demanded. There was a cruel edge to the question. None at all. Brashen permitted himself a bitter smile. That's the problem. He glanced at Amber. I think I had best be going now. I think I need to stay a bit longer. Amber sounded almost apologetic. As you see fit. Well, good evening to you all then. Brashen sketched a bow. Wait! Malta's plea sounded sharp. Please wait. Keffria thought she had never heard such anxiety in her daughter's voice. May I ask some questions about Paragon? Brashen focused his entire attention on her. If you're asking my permission, certainly. And so this is the start of Malta trying to command the room now. And it's in the face of some pushback from her family.
Yeah, it's I find this scene very interesting because we are from a point of view that is somebody who is
Seeing her as a child.
And also someone who has a track record of falling for everything she does.
Right.
So it's interesting to get that perspective for this. It makes me wonder, is this an act? Like, how much of this is an act? I think some of it is a plan. Like, I think that's just who Malta is. I don't think, not as a negative. I just think she knows that acting certain ways gets better results.
It's just in her nature now.
Yeah.
I truly think that this is her, I mean, for lack of something else that's popping in my head, her come to Jesus moment. Okay. Right? This is her father is in danger, and this is an opportunity. Why is it not possible?
Right.
We need to figure out the solution. We need to figure out why. We need to go through every single step to determine if we can do this. Because she's been in that mode for like a couple chapters.
Yeah,
right?
no.
And she made that determination that she needs to step up and fix something. So if something is offered to the whole family, we need to go through every single step to see if it's possible or not. So I think it's her father being in danger and a possible solution offered up is really the moment where she's like, okay, we really need to follow through.
Do you think that she stops Brashen to ask questions because she knows if she doesn't ask now, the adults will leave her out of it?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. I think she's very good at sensing tension between other people. I think the matter would get dropped.
Yeah.
If there was no real agreement tonight. And you can see it's really interesting how other people react to Malta, because Brashen, Keffria says he turns his full attention to her and answers her completely seriously. He looks at her like an adult in this moment.
Yeah.
In my eyes. And then we have Althea not even acknowledging Malta, really, and just saying snide remarks at Brashen's replies later. And eventually being like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And the whole time, Keffria's like, oh, this is my child. My little baby girl.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting dynamic of how people view Malta from an outside perspective. And to be fair, I don't know how much is an act, really. I think she is being at least half sincere, but I do agree with you that she's been manipulating people so long that it is part of her nature, that she knows kind of what faces to present in what company. I mean, everyone does that to a certain point,
definitely.
But she has thought this through to a certain standard.
Yeah. I asked because I do think this is one of the more sincere moments we have of Malta in front of her family, at least. But I also still think part of it is calculated. I can't fully say how much, but I do think that parts of it are a little bit calculated. And I don't necessarily think of that in a negative term. And I don't know. Yeah. And I mean, like you said,
the same way that like
does.
Ronica is very calculated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a big maturity, a big leap in growth for her, but it also is self-serving as much as Althea's saying no is. You know what I mean? Like, so of course she's doing really well in this and is making really good points, but that's because we agree with the points she's making. You know what I mean? Like it's still self-serving. It just so happens that her self-serving nature is also benefiting others in this instance.
So I'm going to bring up a conversation that we've talked about before, that I've specifically brought up multiple times, and it's the pace of Malta's maturity. Yeah. And if it makes sense. And something that you brought up before was that scenes didn't quite make sense for Malta to be so mature in certain scenes. And this kind of feels like that to me. This seems out of her character for the last point of view that we saw of her.
Right.
Or the last scene that we saw of her from Rain's point of view even. She has glimpses of maturity, and I don't know. I'm beginning to think that in Malta's head, if we read through her mind, she is always going to be manipulative, self-serving, not very mature. But through other people's points of view, I think she's going to look like she's stepping up.
Okay.
and being mature. And I think it's going to be more of like a Kenneth kind of situation where I don't know if she's actually maturing or if she's just getting better at hiding things. And like you said, her self-serving goals just happen to align with what the
What's for the
family
greater
wants
good,
and what's
yeah.
for the greater good. I don't know. I'm still skeptical because I went into this, as I want to remind all the listeners here, I went into this thinking, yeah, Malta is a great transformative character arc. It's so good to read. And then we started off and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how bad Malta actually is. And then I actually want to dive into that character development because it's always talked about as such a great character arc and such a change.
Yeah.
Is it true? Book and a half in, I still barely see any growth. There's a little bit. She's actually thinking of a big picture and things. In this scene specifically, she's asking through logical questions and she seems to have a better understanding of the world and consequences and what things mean. But in terms of like personal growth and maturity, I don't know.
I do think that this is a really good scene of showing what she has learned, even though she's been like dragging her feet through becoming a woman through the learning that the Vestrit house has been putting her through.
Yeah.
She still has learned something.
Oh, yeah, she has. And she has changed.
Yeah.
From first.
And I think even if she doesn't want to admit it, that is the betterment is coming from what her grandmother has taught her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see that growth. I think that there is growth there. I think that that alone is growth in itself, even if it's still from a self-serving way.
There's definitely growth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. But like you said, I think it's more akin to a Kenneth thing where it's, I don't know. On the inside, is she that much more mature? Probably not. But is she better at putting on an act? Definitely.
And I think so, like we talked, I think some of this is sincere as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm growing more skeptical of the great transformation. Malta's a wonderful person at the end of it kind of thing.
Yeah, I think.
And I'm leaning more into it just so happens that it worked out for her.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think the reason why people feel like she has matured as much as she had and people like the arc is because when we start, she is so pro Kyle and like anti all the women in her family that it's really easy to dislike her. And as she goes on, she kind of stops caring about her family members and how awful women can be and is more, I mean, not fully, but that's not like the main thing driving her.
But we haven't got there yet.
No, but I'm saying I think that's not the thing driving her anymore. It's more about her personal problems. Yeah. And that's more relatable for readers in general and less annoying, even if she is making selfish decisions. So I think it's more, again, it's just her views are now aligning with the people reading the books and where they want the book to go.
That's fair.
And so it feels like there's more maturity happening than maybe there actually is, just because it's like, oh, I'm starting to agree with Malta a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not her methods, but I agree with Malta. And so therefore there's growth. And I like that. And maybe that, I mean, that's a mark of a good character, I think, to definitely not like them and then root for them, you know? It just...
Oh, it's super well written.
Yeah. I just feel like maybe that's more of what's happening. It's less of a maturity arc and more of a realigning of values that happens to realign with people who are reading it.
And now I think looking forward a little bit, just to wrap this up, I think she will have more actual character and maturity growth when she has to babysit Satrap Cosgo. Yes. She has to go through a lot of pain with him. But also, I think one of the main points that I first brought up is it magical? Is her connection with Tintaglia forcing her to do stuff? And I still want to be on the lookout for that. So I wanted to kind of bring that up and touch on those topics before. As this seemed a good time because I don't know. It feels slightly out of place, this scene, for her.
Interesting.
For me, I guess.
I will agree that this felt extremely mature, but then I remembered that we're reading it from Keffria's point of view.
Right, yeah.
And that helped. Whereas before it was Malta's point of view. I think. I guess also a little bit of Althea's, where I was like, this feels weird that she's so mature. But yeah, I think it helps to remember that because it's not her point of view, it is going to come across as more mature, especially when the baseline is that Keffria is thinking of her as a child.
Right.
So her not throwing a tantrum and not freaking out is like, whoa, what a mature young lady. You know what I mean? I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll get into the scene that we've been talking about. So Malta wants to ask some questions about Paragon, and Brashen gives his whole attention to her. So she's pleading, looking around the room, saying, if he is going to leave us to think on this, then it is like you are always telling me, grandmother, we cannot argue with numbers, nor can we make decisions without them. So to consider this at all, we first need to know the numbers. Ronica Vestrit looks snared between shock and approval. That's true. Malta took a breath. So, my Aunt Althea seems to think that the Paragon will need many repairs before he can sail, but I've always heard that wizardwood doesn't rot. Do you think he needs to be refitted? And Brashen agrees, not as much as normally would, but yes, he does. You know, new mast, new canvas, new lines, anchors, chain, and a ship's boat, plus a kit for the kitchen, carpenter's tools, a medicine chest, all the things a ship must carry aboard it to become its own little world. Many of his seams should be recaulked, and a lot of his bright work needs replacing. Amber did a lot of stuff on the interior, but there's a lot to be done yet. And then there's more expenses of buying foodstuffs. We need a secret store of money or goods to ransom, maybe. We need to buy weapons if Captain Kennett refuses to barter with us. And if we can afford any deck machines, which I'm guessing are like trebuchets or, cannons, anything like that, then they'd have to be installed. And then there would have to be some coin up front to hire hands for the voyage. So there's a long list of stuff there. Then Althea finds her voice and chimes in, saying, do you believe you'll find any decent sailors willing to sign aboard the Paragon? I think you are forgetting his reputation as a killer. Unless you are willing to pay above top wages, why should a good hand ship out on such a vessel? Keffria can kind of tell that Althea might be starting to get interested.
But she's trying to keep her voice civil.
But she's also trying to keep her voice civil, yeah. It would be a problem, Brashen concedes easily. He pulled out the kerchief again and wiped his face. His hands trembled very slightly as he carefully refolded it. There might be a few who would sign on simply for the daring of it. There are always some sailors with more guts than brains. I'd start with Vivacia's old hands first, asking those of your father's crew that Kyle discharged. Some of them might go for the sake of the ship herself, or your father's memory. For the rest, he shrugged, we would end up with the dregs and the troublemakers. A great deal would depend on whom we could get as first mate. A good mate can make a working crew out of near anything, if he's given a free hand. What's to keep them from turning on you when numbers, Malta broke in irritably. There is no sense in worrying about what-ifs until we know it is financially possible. If I give you paper and ink, can you write up for us what you think it would cost? I'm not an expert, Brashen began. Some things would have to be done by professionals, and assuming you'd find any shipwrights willing to work on the Paragon, Althea chimed in sarcastically, his reputation is bad, and assuming the Ludlucks give permission, and Malta's hands clenched into fists on the paper she had taken from the drawer. Keffria thought she would ball it up and throw it on the ground. Instead, the girl closed her eyes for a moment and drew a deep breath. Assuming all that, then, how much money? And can we possibly get it? Until we answer those questions, there is no point in asking others. And once again, Althea chimes in, we may just as easily be defeated by those other factors than by a lack of money. And Malta is saying, all I'm saying is that we should consider those factors in the order in which they may defeat us. If we have no money to hire hands, then we don't have to worry about who will or will not sail for us. So this is what we were talking about before, where Malta is being fairly controlled.
Yeah.
Extremely controlled for herself. She's asking good questions. She has logic in what she's saying. And she's listening to advice from Ronica from before that numbers matter. And Althea is just the one trying to be...
contrarian.
Yeah, contrarian because she doesn't like Brashen right now.
It's never going to work. And I feel like at first from Althea, it starts off as a good question. Like, who are you even going to get to be on the ship? What's the plan for that? Because we don't have very much money, and also who's going to sail on the Paragon?
And then she just gains steam. And again, it's like completely ignoring Malta.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think at first, like I said, at first it is a good question. But then, like you said, she's ignoring Malta. She's ignoring the fact that that's not the question right now. That doesn't even matter. You don't need to go on and on about who you think could and couldn't do it. Because if you don't have any money,
you can't do it anyways.
Yeah. So figure out if you have the money first. And Althea just cannot. She cannot let this be a good idea because it's coming from Brashen. I think if Amber would have come alone, it would have gone over a lot more smoothly. And
with Althea, yeah.
Yeah, Althea would have been like, yeah, let's do it. I don't care. Like, we don't need to think about the logistics. We'll just do it.
I'll captain it.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know. It's a little frustrating. And it's crazy that Malta is able to keep her cool. Mm-hmm. And bring up good points. I mean...
And now we have Mother Keffria here. Althea stared at the girl. Keffria felt her muscles tighten. Althea could be sharp-tongued. If she mocked Malta now, when the girl was trying so hard to be pragmatic, Keffria would not even try to control her temper. You're right, Althea said suddenly. She looked suddenly at their mother. Do we have any reserves left at all? Anything not entailed? Anything we can sell off? There are a few things, Ronica said quietly. She absently twisted the ring on her finger. What we must recall is that whether or not we have possession of the live ship, a payment comes due soon. The Cooper's family will expect... Don't consider that, Malta said quietly. I will accept Rain's suit. I will set a date for our wedding on condition that my father is home to attend it. I think that will win us a reprieve from that debt, and perhaps some financial help to launch the Paragon. So, one, Althea is like, okay, fine. We'll do it your way. Malta's being okay, so.
Yeah, it is kind of weird how quickly she's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Instead
let's do that first. Yeah. Let's play by your game.
But
Ronica's thinking about selling off her wedding ring.
Yeah, which is really sad. But no, I also think it makes sense that Althea didn't go to attack Malta. Althea hasn't really been doing that. I mean, She did when she first came back, and Malta was being inappropriate and rude all of the time. And I think last chapter we had with the two of them, we saw that Althea's trying to have a relationship with Malta and be like, listen.
Once in a while.
Yeah, I think she's trying to be like, hey, we're family, and your dad's a crap person, but he's your dad, I guess, so I get it. But like, maybe we have other things that we could agree on. And so I'm not surprised. It's funny that Keffria is surprised to me, because it's like, have you been paying attention at all? Probably not. It is Malta, and you don't seem to pay attention to your children, but it is interesting to have her be like, oh, Althea's going to be so mean to Malta for no reason right now. And I don't think Althea's mean to people for no reason. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think she sometimes says things that are hurtful, and she can be.
Except to Brashen.
Okay, well, that's not no reason in her mind.
Also, to Amber about not being Bingtown Trader.
That's fair. That is, yeah. But I don't think she just like...
No, yeah. She's not just she's not just cruel person.
Yeah, and that's what this felt like. It's like, what mean thing would she have said to her? I don't know. I guess maybe like
something about like, let the adults talk or something.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, this kind of stuns the room a little bit. Malta offering herself into marriage for the Cooper's family. And this is not what I'm talking about when I'm saying it doesn't make sense.
Right.
All the questions before that is what is like,
yeah.
Malta, really? This feels in line with her character because she was talking about that before. She had huge, intense monologues. She's like, if I have to, I will do it to save my dad.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to go talk to Sir Wintrell and see if he can give me money.
Right. Yeah, she is totally for using a man and his funds to help their cause. She's like,
she's resigned to it, but if this will help save her dad, she will marry Rain.
Right.
Agree to.
I do also want to say the fact that she says, I'll set the marriage date contingency on my dad being there to give us reprieve does kind of seem like in her mind she could still get out of it.
Yep. She's like, my dad's going to come home and he's not going to make me follow through with it.
Yeah. I genuinely believe on her end that she's like, I don't actually have to marry this guy. I just have to say I will. What's the big deal?
Exactly.
And everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're going to sacrifice yourself. And she's like, no.
No, you can't.
There must be another way.
That's Keffria right there.
Literally, because then it's in her mind, she's like, I have to bite my lip from trying to tell my daughter Kyle isn't worth it.
She looked at her daughter and suddenly saw her as someone else. The spoiled and stubborn girl who would stop at nothing to get her own way was suddenly a young woman who would sacrifice anything, even herself, to rescue her father. This unswerving act of will was rattling. Keffria bit her tongue to keep from telling her that Kyle wasn't worth it. He would never understand that what his daughter had been ready to sacrifice was not a moment's brave word, but her whole life. No one, she thought, can be worth another's entire life spent in subservience. She glanced at the slave boy so silently watching them all, but found herself considering her marriage. A bitter smile bent her mouth. One woman had already made that sacrifice for Kyle Haven. Malta, please do not make such a decision under these circumstances. The power in her own voice surprised her. I do not dispute that it is your decision to make. Proof enough of your womanhood is that you are willing to make it. I simply ask that you delay such a course until all others have been explored. Malta asks hopelessly, what other courses? Through all our troubles, no one has come to our aid. Who do we think might help us now? Althea says maybe the Tenera family and a few other liveship owners. And this is where Brashen's like, oh, I forgot. You guys don't know what happened in Bingtown. There's some things that they're going to be busy with.
Yeah, they'll actually be too busy to help. So
because there was an actual riot, not a almost riot.
Yep.
But yeah, so Keffria is in her head thinking, well, I already made that sacrifice. Don't waste your life for the same man.
Yeah, one is enough, honey, which good for you, Keffria.
Right.
The one time you're like, yeah, my daughter doesn't need to follow me in my footsteps for this. Love that for you. I will say, though, it's kind of weird to me that she's like, people shouldn't live in subservience to others, and then looks at the slave boy and is like, yikes. Anyway, I did that to Kyle already. Like, it's so weird. I don't know. I get it. And I get that she's like maybe connecting the dots for the first time of like, oh yeah, maybe slavery is bad. Like,
I think she knows it's bad, but because we were talking about this when Kyle said he was going to do slavery, Keffria was also like, what? No.
Yeah. But like, she kind of was like, it's illegal here. Not like, those are human beings. You know what I mean? It feels more like before it was kind of like, ooh, it doesn't look great that we're doing that. And now it's like, oh, maybe slaves are also humans.
Well, at least she's having the epiphany.
Yes, it's good. You know what? Learning is good at any stage. It just is like a little, I don't know. It doesn't feel very good to read it like that, I guess.
So Brashen breaks in and shares his news that there was a riot at the tariff docks tonight. Tenera and some of the others went down in force. They moved Althea out to the center of the harbor, and a whole fleet of small boats went out to unload her. The cargo has been scattered all over Bingtown. Tenera gave it away rather than pay any tariffs on it, but that didn't stop the Chalcedeans from trying to interfere. Sweet Saw, have mercy. Was anyone hurt? Ronica demanded. Brashen's smile was not a friendly one. The Bingtown harbor master is quite upset about 2 sunken galleys. Unfortunately, they went down right near the tariff docks. No large ships are going to be able to get there to tie up for a long time. Saw only knows when they'll find a way to raise them. They burned going down, Amber added. She sounded both saddened and satisfied. She added casually, part of the tariff dock caught as well. When we left, some of the satrap's warehouses were still burning. Brashen's tone challenged Althea. You might concede there was a good reason to be concerned for your safety on such a night. You were down there? Althea looked from one to the other. All those fires. Too many to be one accidental fire spreading. This was planned in advance, wasn't it? Why didn't I know? Ophelia and I have become very good friends, Amber replied evasively. Why wasn't I told? Maybe it wasn't a fit place for a trader's daughter to be, Brashen shrugged. More sourly, he added, perhaps Greg cares enough for you that he wouldn't want to risk you being arrested also. Greg was arrested? For a short time. They found the Chalcedonian guards who were supposed to be holding him, but Greg himself has disappeared. He permitted himself a small smile. I understand that he's fine, however. I'm sure you'll hear from him in a day or so. Surely he wouldn't leave his lady love in suspense. How do you know so much? How did you happen to be down there? Althea's anger was building. She had flushed a deep scarlet. Keffria could not understand why she was so upset about this. Did she wish she had been at a riot instead of driving Devad home? Yes, Keffria, she actually did.
Yeah. And it's not about wishing that she was there rather than Devad.
No,
I think it's
wishing she had been told and included in the plan.
And I think that's especially when Brashen says, well, maybe it's because it's not a fit place for a trader's daughter.
Yeah.
That's
a
the rub.
barb. Yeah.
That is, and I don't even know if he means it to be a barb, but that is why it'll never work with Greg for Althea, because Greg sees her as a proper trader's daughter and not an equal partner.
Yeah.
Because if he saw her as an equal partner, he would have told her this was happening, and he didn't. And that's a pretty big break of trust. And I get Althea's anger here. She thought at the very least that Greg had respect for her and saw her differently than other men did, and he doesn't. He sees her the same way as they do because he's treating her the same way they would. She didn't need to get involved. And I feel really bad for her in this because she didn't even necessarily need to go down there, but she doesn't even know that it's going to happen. She wasn't part of the preparation. She couldn't have helped set up the bundles to burn the stuff later. You know, it just like not letting her be part of any little part at all is so awful, I feel like. And that's, I think, fully swung me away from Greg being a good match from Althea.
Interesting.
But I also feel like in this moment, it's really funny that Keffria is like, I don't get it. It's like, really? Okay. Well, you don't know your sister, so that's why.
So Brashen explains that he saw a group of disgruntled traders heading down, joined them, learned what they were going to do, and other people joined them as well. And then on the way down, he learned what had happened to Devad Restart's carriage.
I do have a quick question. When did Greg join this group? Because Greg drove Althea's family home.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking that too.
Because he says Tanira led the people, but is he meaning Tomi? Okay. It just, Greg
he is
joined what he
Tanira.
could. Yeah, that's fair.
So Brashen is saying, I learned about Devad Restart's carriage on the way down. If I'd been there, I would never have allowed you to drive that carriage off alone. What Tanira was thinking, I don't. I've told you before, I don't need you to look after me. Althea was suddenly savagely angry. I don't need anyone's help. Oh, that's obvious now. I'm only puzzled as to why you stood up at the traders' meeting and asked for the help you now refuse. I don't need help from you, Althea clarified fiercely. I do. Keffria found her sister's shock almost satisfying. She met Althea's glare with a calm look. You seem to have forgotten that I, not you, am the trader for this family. I am not so proud as to turn away the only help we may be offered. What do you need to begin this? Where do we start? So Keffria is the first one to kind of join all in, say, like, we might as well go for this plan.
Yeah.
Let's stop talking about you and Brashen, Althea. Let's just get away from that topic. Things are going on down there. Okay, fine. Let's back to what we were talking about.
As much as I don't love her response, I think this is a really good show of the growth from Keffria, that she has a backbone now and she's willing to overstep her sister when her sister is trying to call the shots.
Definitely.
I do think, though, that this immaturity we're seeing from Althea is not stemming from her thinking she needs to be in charge. This is like an impulsive reaction because of how upset she is, because she hates not having a say, and she hates being treated like a woman. She does not like being treated like a fragile creature, a doll that cannot know things and cannot help. Mm-hmm. And I think that is super fair and valid. I don't love how she goes about expressing that, but she also has been pushed to her limit. It's the middle of the night, so I'm not really going to hold it against her. You know what I mean? Like, sure, she also has some maturing to do, but whatever. I feel bad for her. And I hate that Keffria's response is to twist the knife in, be like, you forgot I'm actually the one that dad gave the inheritance to. Yeah, she knows that. Why do you think she has such a big problem with everybody saying they want to help her? Like, I don't know. It just is hard because it's like Keffria's like, what a great feeling to have this, like, hold this over Althea in this moment. And it's like, girl, your sister is hurting and you are digging the knife in deeper. That's not nice.
The Brashen outlines what they need to do next, saying, yeah, we need money to start, but then also nods to Ronica. And the captain's lady will have to push Devadra start to make him present this offer favorably to the Ludlucks. Yes?
He does specifically say the little one is right.
Yeah.
Referring to Malta. I just thought that was interesting because we have been saying that everybody's seeing her more adult-like, and he's like, the little one.
Any other live ship owners who would add their approval would help. Maybe Althea could get her sweetheart to put in his word on this. I know a few of the live ships and I'll speak to them directly. You might be surprised how much pressure a live ship can put on his family. And I highlighted that line because that is something that Althea learned on the way back to Bingtown.
Mm-hmm.
And Brashen just seems to know that.
Yeah.
So he's just showing how knowledgeable he is of Bingtown itself and the practices around live ships.
I think that knowledge itself is kind of weird to me
and
because
the fact that he knows multiple live ships.
Yeah, because the Teneras do not, or sorry, the Trells do not have a live ship.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
We've talked about this, and we had somebody reach out and say
that's
that
right.
Do. Yeah.
Okay, so never mind.
They have a live ship. He knows Paragon and he knew Vivacia, but
Vivacia wasn't
does he know
awake.
other ones? Yeah, exactly.
So how old was he when he got kicked out? Like 14?
Like 14.
So it's interesting that he was taught enough as a son that was going to be taking over a family live ship that he knows enough to know that much about live ships.
Maybe he's had a conversation with Ophelia as well.
Maybe he has. I don't know. But it doesn't surprise me he knows other live ships because I think
he spent a lot of time on the docks, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know, he's a vagabond a little bit, so he's probably sneaking away to talk to his own live ship as well as others in the dockyards. I don't know.
Yeah, so I highlighted that. So you might be surprised at how much pressure a live ship can put on his family. And then he rubs his temples. Althea is right. Getting a crew will be a problem. I'll start on that immediately. Put word out in the taverns that I'm hiring a lively crew of daring men. Those that come will half expect to turn pirate. They may turn away at the name of Paragon, but I'll go. I'll sail with you. The boy blushed a bit when they all stared at him, but he didn't lower his eyes from Brashen's face. The plate of food looked as if it was clean.
Yeah. So Brashen tries to turn away Clef and says, that's really brave of you, but no, you're a kid.
You're a bit small.
You're too young.
And he's like, I fished with my dad.
I fished with my dad before the slave raiders came. know my way around a dick. I'd rather do that and shovel horse shit. Houses stink.
You're cracking yourself up with this.
I can't. It just makes me think of that video of like, well, it was one of yous.
Disgusting. Well, Keffria asks, you're free now. Wouldn't you rather go home to your family? And he kind of clams up a little bit. And he shrugs. His voice was harder and less boyish as he said, nothing but ashes and bones there. I'd rather go back to sea. It's my life, right? Freed, am I? He looked about defiantly as if expecting them to revoke that. You're free, Althea assured him. Then I'm gone with him. He tossed his head at Brashen, who shook his head slowly. There is another idea, Malta broke in suddenly. Buy a crew. I've seen some tattooed-faced sailors about Bingtown. Why couldn't we just buy some sailors? Because slavery is wrong, Amber pointed out dryly. On the other hand, I know some slaves who might be willing to risk punishment by running away and joining the crew. They were stolen from homes and families in the Pirate Isles. They might be willing to take part in a chancy venture if they were promised the opportunity to go home. Some might even know something of the waters. Could we trust slave sailors? Keffria asked hesitantly. On the ship, they wouldn't be slaves, Brashen pointed out. If it's a choice between an able-bodied runaway and a broken-down drunk, I'll hire the runaway. A little gratitude from a man given a second chance at life can go a long way. He looked suddenly thoughtful as he said this. And then Althea chimes in. Who put you in charge of hiring? Althea protested. If we're going to do this, I'll want the final say on my crew.
She just...
Althea! Stop it!
She can't leave well enough alone, and she can't let other people have the final say. She's in charge. She needs to be in charge. She needs everybody to know she's in charge, and she's making the decisions.
Yep.
It's a little annoying.
And Keffria says, why do you even think you're going? Like, you can't be thinking of sailing with them, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy dangerous thing, and there's no telling what danger they will encounter. You should not go. And Althea gives a very valid point of like, that's why I should go. We can't beg for help from people and talk about how important this is to us and then say, well,
None
it's
of the
not
family.
important. Yeah, it's not important enough for us to risk our lives over it, but you guys should risk your lives. So of course she has to go. And I think that's a very valid point.
Also, they're rescuing Vivacia, so
yeah. She needs to be there.
Need to be there.
Yeah, which Brashen brings up. He supports
Yeah.
Althea in this and says, actually, I do think she should go because once we get Vivacia will definitely need Althea.
Mm-hmm. And he agrees with Althea's point, saying, like, if only I go, you entrusted a live ship to a ne'er-do-well, disinherited trader's son.
And a foreigner.
And aren't putting your own family on board.
Yeah.
That doesn't show confidence.
No, and we're not gonna get the ship that way. But Althea is a Vestrit and you guys have a good name. So it'll come back.
And then he adds, but I do not think she should sail as captain, mate, or even crew. This is going to be a tough crew, one that will be kept in line by fists and brawn, initially anyway. The type of men we'll end up with aren't going to respect anyone who can't pound them to the deck if he has to. You don't qualify. And if you're working alongside them, they aren't going to give you respect. They'll test your abilities at every turn. Sooner or later, you would get hurt. Althea's eyes narrowed. I don't need you to look after me, Brashen Trell, remember? I've proved my abilities, and they're not just based on body strength. My father always said it was a poor captain who had to keep his crew in line by blows. Maybe because he felt that was the first mate's job, Brashen retorted, which I thought was funny because he was the first mate.
Yeah.
He modified his tone as he added, your father was a fine captain with a wonderful ship, Althea. He could have paid low wages and still had good men willing to work for him. We won't have his options, I'm afraid. He yawns and says, I'm sorry, I'm tired. I need to get some sleep. I think at least we know what our difficulties are going to be. Amber chimes in and says, there's one other problem we haven't addressed at all tonight. We can't assume that Paragon will enter into this willingly. And there's the crux of the matter.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing here. Basically, she's saying he's very back and forth between frightened boy and angry man. We don't know what he's going to be, or even if he wants to sail, or if he'll willingly sail. And that's going to be very important.
Yeah. Especially because even if he agrees this week, we don't know if a week or 2 weeks from now, he's going to change his mind. And if he isn't willing in this, we cannot do it.
But again, they brought it back to the beginning. If we can't get the sale, that doesn't matter.
Right.
Like if we can't get the sale done where we could own him potentially, that doesn't even matter. So let's start there. And Ronica's instantly saying, I think I can prevail there. I'll start tomorrow. So by tomorrow night, we should know. And Keffria almost feels bad for Devad.
Yeah, the way Ronica says it, she's got a steely voice. She's being harsh. She is ready to get some payback on Devad.
Brashen sighs heavily. We are in agreement then. I will return tomorrow afternoon. Good night, Ronica and Keffria. Good night, Althea. There was a very subtle change to his tone as he bid her sister good night. Good night, Brashen. Althea returned his farewell in a similar tone. Amber too bid them farewell, and as Althea prepared to walk them to the door, the slave boy also stood. Keffria knew a moment of exasperation with her sister's impulsive behavior. Don't forget, you have to find a place for the boy to sleep. The boy shook his head. You want to go for it?
No, not here. I'm gone off with him. He tossed his head at Brashen.
No, Brashen made the single word final.
Freed, am I? Can't stop me.
Don't bet on that, Brashen told him ominously. In a kinder voice, he added, Boy, I can't take care of you. I've got no home to go to. I'm on my own.
Me too.
The boy insisted calmly. I think you should let him go with you, Brashen, Amber suggested. She had a strange, speculative look on her face. With a wry twist to her mouth, she added, It might not be the best of luck to turn away your first willing crewmate.
That's right, the boy asserted cockily. Elle can't respect a man who won't dare. Dare take me. You won't regret it.
Brashen squinted his eyes shut tightly and shook his head. But as he left the room, the boy followed him, and he made no motion to discourage him. Amber followed with a small smile on her face.
I love Clef so much. It's so funny. Like, you have to dare. You know, the L, my God, L, he doesn't like you if you can't take a dare, and I dare you. Let's go.
Well-written 11-year-old boy.
Yes.
But Malta is asking, do you think they can bring Papa home when Amber, Brashen, and Clef have left? It's just the family here. And I think Althea is gone as well, walking to the door.
Mm. And Keffria is hesitating on an answer because she's trying to find a soft way to say this to a child, to keep the hope alive, it seems. But her mom has no such qualms, and Ronica just flat out says, Our finances are foundering, my dear. There is no point to refusing this risk. If it succeeds, it may save the family fortunes. If they fail, we will sink a bit faster. That is all. Keffria thought it a cruel thing to say to a child, but to her surprise, Malta nodded slowly. I was thinking the same thing myself, she observed. It was the first time in the last year that she had spoken in a completely civil tone to her grandmother.
Oh, yes. Puberty's wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I don't think Malta's opinion of her grandmother has changed at all. I think she just recognized that they're on the same page for this, and so it won't be an obstacle.
Agree. But yeah, eventful chapter. Very eventful chapter.
Definitely.
Aftermath is right.
It's a pretty good one, I think, overall. It's got some good sections in there, some funny ones, some serious ones.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard because there's a role reversal almost, with Althea being the annoying one and Malta being mature and the one we're rooting for. But yeah, I don't know.
It's so funny to me looking at this in an objective note, thinking, oh yeah, there was some levity, some great jokes, but looking at it, it's not that funny. It's just that Althea smells bad and the boy won't take her hand, and we're laughing like it's hysterical.
It is. You know what? For this book, it is. And when is a poop joke
point.
When is a poop joke not funny?
Yeah, that is my point. That for this book, it is the height of comedy.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you have thoughts about, I don't know, the accent of the Six Duchies.
If you are from Scotland or Ireland or have that ancestry and you want to berate me, just know I know. It's not good. It's okay.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please let us know your thoughts about this chapter or the future of these books or past books if you're there. And you can email us at isfitshappy@gmail.com or go to our website, isfitshappy.com. And you can find all of our links to our socials on there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube. We're on all of those at isfitshappy.
Yeah. Can't wait to see you next week.
Jeez.
Should I not? Should I read? Okay, now's our favorite part where we get to talk about what you guys have brought in. Sorry for the poor accents again, 2 weeks in a row. They're fun, so you'll probably hear them again. I'm not sorry enough to stop, I guess. But anyway, we'll focus on some other comments we got this week. One was an email we got from Ellen to let us know how they listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, Ellen commented that it comes in around Friday afternoon for them, and they try to not be too frustrated during work because they can't listen to it, but then kind of catch up over the weekend. So thank you very much for letting us know there. And thank you for the cat pictures as well.
Yes, we love to see Sam.
Yes.
So cute.
Although Pearl Cop is a good name change because Ellen sent in 2 pictures, one from 4 years ago where Sam's coloring is quite a bit lighter and then has gotten darker over the years. So,
yeah, hopefully you are the
catalyst.
The catalyst, and you have been on the right path.
Right.
I mean, you have to be if your cat's getting darker. So
True.
So thank you, Ellen, for writing in. We also got an email from Jonas about Keffria and Althea's relationship from Keffria's point of view.
Yeah, we had the discussion in part 1 about how Keffria views Althea, and I was kind of talking from Keffria's point of view, and I went on a long rambly thing about it because I hadn't really thought about it before. And Jonas kind of sums up some good points here as well.
Right. And I think especially because I had a lot of questions about why Keffria would have such a negative view of her sister. Like, what is it that's driving that? Because we don't really get a lot of their early relationships. So it's really hard for me personally to understand where the bad blood comes in, especially because Keffria is spoiled as well and isn't held to normal standards just as much as Althea isn't, in my opinion. But that isn't necessarily true.
Right. Jonas is mainly talking about how since there is such a huge gap between them, Keffria was kind of already established as who she was. She was a trader's daughter, right? She was kind of on the picturesque path as a trader's daughter. And then Althea comes along and gets pretty much whatever she wants because she's the favorite of her dad's. And all of a sudden, then years pass and she's 19 and is like, oh, yep, this is my ship, when Keffria did everything right according to society, and also has a husband who is the captain of the ship currently, and is like, what do you mean?
Yeah. And also she has kids and an actual family, and Althea is a teenager being like, this is mine. I deserve it. Yeah.
As the younger daughter.
Which I guess is a really good point. Like, as much as we get Althea's point of view as to why she feels like it's her birthright, and we know that kind of everybody was shocked she didn't end up getting the ship, from Keffria's point of view, it is kind of a wild notion, because I'm sure Keffria hadn't ever thought about it, especially if her husband is the active captain. Why wouldn't it go to them as full-grown adults with a family? Because I think Keffria probably, like their mother, assumes that Althea is going to grow out of this traveling thing. Like, she doesn't get to be on a boat forever.
Right.
That's not realistic. So maybe there's also that coming into play.
True.
So that's a really good point out from Jonas.
Jonas also asks at the end, or at least states, that the thing that surprises him the most about Keffria is that Keffria wants the respect of Althea. And that's just very surprising in general.
Yeah.
He says, come on, Keffria, you're like 30 plus years old. You got kids. Why care about the opinion about that young brat that's always chasing the wind? And I think it's just a family thing. You know, you always want to have that familial love and that some sort of connection, right? Because Althea keeps trying to reach out to Malta and wants some sort of connection there. I think it's just the position that they're in right now and the vested values in general. They need to come together as a family, and so why not try?
Yeah. I guess also, speaking as someone who has siblings, that there's a really big age gap. So one of my brothers is 12 years younger than me. You do want them to like you at least. Yeah. And so, like, I guess my brother's still pretty young, but if he was like 19 and hated me, I think I would be pretty upset too, and like kind of want that respect back.
Right.
And I don't know. So I kind of get that point of view. But I definitely think it is a little silly to be 30 with children and being worried about what a teenager thinks about you and thinking that you need their respect to be a real adult or be taken seriously when it's not necessarily that. I don't know. And I think part of that kind of makes me feel bad for Keffria is I don't think that Althea thinks that she is disrespectful to Keffria or doesn't think of Keffria as an authority figure, if that makes sense. I just think that Althea treats everyone the same.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that Keffria has opinions if they're different to Althea, because that's just who Althea is. So I think it really does come down to they're just two very different people.
Yeah.
So thank you for that point of view, Jonas. It was very enlightening and a good thing to point out for us. So thank you to everyone who wrote in. We love hearing from you guys every week, and we love getting to hear your guys' opinion and have thoughts that are different from our own. So thanks, guys. See you next week.